Welcome back to the third part of this tutorial where we will dive into Drishti Paint. So let's just open it up from your taskbar there, which I'm sure you have it at the ready at all times. I know I certainly do. To start off, I'll just kind of orient us to everything you see here on the screen. Up here you have, the bar that you'd expect, all Mac whatever. Drishti Paint, you can read in your leisure about Drishti Paint. Drishti Paint is actually made up of, I think, 3 different modes. I only am familiar with the graph cut. I think curves and super pixels are explained by the creator AJ Lamaye. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce his name, but you can look him up on YouTube. The creator of Drishti has different videos on these. View, transfer functions, segment parameters, and 3D preview. That's all of these things. 3D preview, these parameters and transfer functions over here. If you're just going to be editing like in the 3D and you know that you don't need to use like these transfer functions, you can make it disappear and it'll be bigger for you. But I know for what I'm about to show you, we definitely need these things, so we're going to keep that around. And now the file has everything that you'd expect from a file tab, such as loading and importing whatever, and pretty much the whole goal of using Drishti Paint, at least for me, is to use the extract tagged region feature, where you'll have your model in this box here. I'll open ours up shortly, and you cover it with a tag, and then you extract the tag region, and then you'll be able to open up just that part of your full scan in regular Drishti. Mesh tag region is also pretty cool. It converts the thing that you have tagged into an STL file, or I think some other options you have there, so you can 3D print what you have tagged and enjoy it in all its STL glory. So we could hit the load to bring in our 6811 or whatever file that we're working on right now, but the easiest way that I've known to do it is just go right to your file and drag in the pvl.nc, and it should be able to add it just from that. And what it's doing now is creating the mask, which is where all of the data that you edit on the actual scan itself, that is these 2 files. This is the header, and then this is the zip that actually has all of the data in it. This accesses this, and then it saves all of your edits in a mask. This is the histogram that you use, although it doesn't save your histogram settings whenever you leave your work. So that's why we want to record that value when we get to that. But for now, subsampling level, I have no idea what this means, but I just always go with the suggested value of 2, and it works out. I think it might depend on how strong your computer's rendering capabilities are, but it does just fine on the good old MacBook Pro with a subsampling of 2. So cool. Alright, now we have our scan in its full glory. Before we dive in, I'll continue the tour of everything you see here on the screen. The help menu is alright. It gives you basic information about all 3 of the modes and basic functions, but actually the most helpful menu I've seen in Drishti is clicking this little question mark here. I didn't even know that there was a help menu hidden there until I saw it in I think it was Robert Asher's video or something, but this is pretty darn great. These explain all of these values over here, but what has been really helpful is reading the hotkey plus mouse help menu. It's where I got most of the knowledge, and you can definitely go through and read all these things and get a lot of good knowledge. There are some functions that I haven't messed around with that will probably make this process even faster, but I'll go ahead and give you an overview of the keys that I found to be most helpful here in a second. So the thing that I like to start off first is changing the save frequency to like as high as it can go, because otherwise as you're doing your processes, it'll like interrupt you every 50 keystrokes, I think is how it does save frequency, and it just gets really annoying, and I just tend to save after every like process I do instead of having the program decide when to save. I'll explain all these values later. The 3D preview I really haven't messed around with a lot. I'm just changing the depth value there. I don't know what's going on with that. I have gotten errors that say like you can't do this because you're not in sketchpad mode, or you are in sketchpad mode, but I don't use anything here except for the update button, which is like as we tag things in the various graph cuts and you want to see it on the 3D preview, then you hit update and it'll update it and you can see it. Here are the tags that we'll be using to actually separate out the one vertebrae in this case from all the others. So how it will work is I'll be working in like most often this red tag 2, and then I'll have another tag color that's like tag 8 that I'll use for like everything else that I don't want to be in the tagged region, which is just like kind of a trash tag for things that you don't want to be in your final thing. You'll see the process. Just hold on a second. And now brings us to this here transfer function. Sometimes when you open this up, there will be little holes in the middle of the bones. We can actually like make some of those appear if you drag the upper limit. See how the bone is like cut out of the cylinder of the matter that was around the snake that was being scanned. That's because on this side of the transfer function or histogram or whatever this thing is, this is the denser material, and then over here is all that lighter stuff. So I want all that dense material, so I just max it out immediately, and then I drag this to about right there, and then ooh, look at that, some nice bone. First hotkey I'll teach you is to press B, and it will make the box disappear, so now you can just see your beautiful, beautiful scan without all of the lines in the way. Okay, so with this we aren't left many choices on which vertebrae we're going to choose. It looks like this one in the middle is the only one intact, so we're going to keep our eyes on that. And what I'm going to do now is kind of play around with the lower end of this spectrum and see how like a lot of this cartilage and stuff is disappearing. Well, of course we want as much of that preserved as possible so we can get like a full picture of the vertebrae, but it's also makes it extremely hard to segment if bones are like up against one another like that, or these are the real like painful areas, or the condyle, which you can't see right now but it's hidden within like right there. That's a real pain. So it's best to try and get as much as the cartilage and other like light material that isn't going to mess with your results shaved off by moving up that transfer function. So I really don't have a set process for this, but I think like that's too much, but probably like that looks pretty good. So there's some holes there, but overall it looks like the structure's pretty preserved. So that is at 194. I'm gonna go ahead and write that down, because if the program crashes, or you want to go eat some food, take a water break, go to the pool or whatever, and you exit out of Drishti, you save your work and then exit out, the next time you open up your whatever PVL file, you'll just drag it right back into the program, and it will save everything that you've tagged, but your histogram will be like way the heck out here again, and you'll be like, I don't want to tag this cylinder. You need to drag it exactly back to where you had it before. Otherwise, there will be either new little cartilaginous places around stuff that you've already segmented, or you'll actually have segmented stuff that's not there, and your final thing will be all janky because of that. Yeah. All right. What I want to start off by saying is I'm going to show you how to do the nitty-gritty down and dirty version of segmenting with Drishti. It's actually a lot easier to do the method that Robert Asher outlines in his video, in which what you do, you'll go in and use like a trash tag, basically, or like my tag 8, and paint, like if you wanted to, if this little section of rib was your goal for segmenting out, what you would do is you'd like tag all of this part of the vertebrae, and then you would hit this little check mark, which would make it disappear on the 3D view, and then you can just fill in your rib really easily, and Drishti can do that in the 3D view. If you're doing things like mandibles of snakes, or ribs with like really like few connections, then that's the best, greatest way to do things. But for vertebrae, if you look, going through and painting all of the places that it connects to another vertebrae that you don't want, so that way you could make the connections disappear and then just have your isolated vertebrae in space to fill in, would be extremely painstaking. I've done it before, and it takes like 8 hours to do, and then the product really isn't the best. So it's better to just go through if you have something really hairy, and it probably is gonna take like close to 4 or 5 hours, but yeah, this is a pretty nice scan, so we'll see what we can do. All right, now let's get to it. I'm gonna illustrate all of the basic hotkeys and functions that I know now. The first thing that we're gonna do, oh, and I'll explain how I've been fidgeting around with this scan. It's a right click to rotate it around that little axis there, and then left click to shift the whole thing in its orientation. And then you can change the placement of that little X with Command on Mac right click. I'm afraid I don't know what that translates to on Windows, but you can figure it out. So what that does is it orients all of the slices in that one space. So you can see, like, if you scroll through one of the slices, it'll go only in this axis, and you can see that like go in the other slices. But Command click orients you on the 3D view and on all the slices. So let's get to it. I think we're going to start right here in the classic Y view. let's do a quick orientation on which vertebrae is which. So we can scroll through here and I really cannot tell you which vertebrae is the one that we want. Okay, so it's this one that's connected. These two things are this vertebrae that we want. And now I'll scroll to that one place that we were just at. Cool, so we can keep track of that in our minds. Is this little section, this top section is the one that we want to be segmenting out in our red tag. So I was messing around with the blue tag. Now over here we can see that we are now playing with tag 2, and the most basic function is to lay down a thing of paint. And look, so nice, beautiful candy cane stripe. And you think you have it all colored in, right? Well, no, as you can see as you scroll through, nothing has changed. And at this point, you say, what the heck, Drishti, I'm trying to paint this thing red and you're not letting me, and you get frustrated and you quit the program, or at least that's what I did when I first tried to do this. But what you actually need to do is utilize the hotkeys, because what you've done is place down a layer of paint but not actually tagged anything. So the most basic hotkey is to press P, and the color intensifies, and now you have your layer of tag underneath the paint that you just laid down. So that's just like a perspective area that you have painted, and then you press P to confirm it. And if you want to get rid of all that paint that you laid down, you press the escape key and it'll disappear. See, like now on this slice, there is no tagged material underneath those things, but if you continue to scroll through, here you have what we just tagged with the P key, or painted in underneath, the confirm for the paint. Yeah, so now we just go through and we paint everything. You got to make sure you get all those pixels there. Yep, and this would take like 12 hours for one scan. We can do things faster. Yes, that's right. Let me show you the shift key. So you can actually lay down a thing of paint, right? And we can scroll through and see that we want this region painted for a lot of slices. So what we can do is we could just press P and keep scrolling, but the shift key is your friend, and what you can do is press shift and then P at the same time, and this little box will pop up that says apply operation in which direction, and that of course is asking which direction you want to apply the paint in. And so if you could see, the little cursor was moving up this way, which of course means backwards. So before we press this, a very important thing to note is this is a repeat function. Shift plus any hotkey is a repeat function, which can be very helpful and make your scans go really quickly, as you'll soon see, because we'll graduate to other hotkeys other than just P. But they're also very aggressive and can destroy hours of work at the slightest misstep, because there's an aggressive autosave feature after every repeat process you do, and if sometimes Drishti decides to be temperamental, the key that you press to end the repeat process, which is escape, sometimes that doesn't work, so you watch as this repeat process is continued over your whole scan and destroys a bunch of work, and there's no way to get back to it unless what you do is you go and like save your mask file to your desktop, and then go back and perform the repeat function. And then if it screws like everything up, you can just like exit out and then use that old mask function, and then hopefully you'll go back to the stage right before. But this is a pretty safe thing that we're doing right here, this paint. So I'm just gonna hit OK, and you can see it appears that it's going through the slices and it stopped hitting. So I'm gonna press escape and in the process, and it's gonna think on if it really wants to stop it or if it wants to keep going and just scroll through and be tagging the space underneath this, which means it will be doing nothing. And it will take a second to save, and boom, repeat process, stop. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit escape so we can see the work that was done. We go through and look, that stationary area that we defined is now painted or tagged in all of those slices. So that's cool, right? Well, yeah, like I said, it's gonna take like 50 million hours if you just go through and paint everything painstakingly. So that brings us to the next hotkey, which is T. T is really the bread and butter of Drishti, and how T works is you lay down some paint and then you press T, and now you have a whole freaking half your scan is tagged. But of course you do not want that. We only want this little chunk separated from this vertebrae scan. So that brings us to our next hotkey, which is R. R gets rid of all of the tagged material on the slice that you have selected, and only in the tag that you have selected. So if I like do something in blue over here and then press, actually I'm gonna press escape, and see, escape actually gets rid of both colors of paint, so you want to be careful with that. If I press T, it'll tag this little section. Now if I go to this and press T, all I want to do is erase, like, oh, like it got that little bit over here, so I'll hit R, and that little blue piece over there is still tagged in the blue. So you really got to pay attention to which thing you have tagged, because if you have a bunch of blue paint down, even if you press T, it could tag if you have red paint down somewhere else, or a red tag somewhere else, which we'll get into. So yeah, let's get into actually using T usefully. So we press T, and you can see it got that little piece over there, and it didn't get this whole section. So that's where these bad boys sitting over here to the left come in. What we could do to get this bigger part is decrease the lambda function. And we'll press R, and then look, if we do T again, that decreased lambda function of 1 notch now has it tagging the whole other region too. So we actually definitely don't want that. Let's increase it up to 10, and I'm actually going to go to 11. And so we can see what happens when we press T on a lambda value of 11. And you can see it's kind of even a little bit more selective. But if you put some more paint down over here and then press T, you basically say to Drishti that it's okay for the whole tag to extend over here. And we actually want this whole section tagged, so I'm going to put down a little bit more and then press T again. Oh, and see, we definitely don't want that whole section. So I'm going to press R and then increase lambda one more time. And press T again, and see, oh, see, it did a much better job with just that single increase. But it still has all of these like little things leaking over into something that we can definitely tell is not part of the vertebrae that we want. And that can be remedied with box size. And box size is, how I think of it, is like what level of grouping of pixels, or I guess voxels in this case, for 3D and all, you know, does Drishti like work in. So like a box size of 5 will mean it'll be, you know, like a 5 by 5 voxel size like box that it analyzes where the tag is going to go when you press T. So if you want more detailed selection of tagging area, you decrease the box size and it should get even more detailed. So see, now it's even more scared to go over here, so I'm gonna say that's alright and put some more paint down. And oh, see, that's pretty good stuff. There's that little section right there, and I think this is a great time to go into another useful hotkey. Shift right click, and you can see when you do shift right click, there's this unusual tag color laid down. If you scroll through, it's tag number 255. And you might think, oh, this is just another trash tag that will like persist if you press T, but look, if I press T, nothing more happens because we're still on tag 2. So what gives? Well, that's the magic of tag 255. Tag 255 is actually another name for tag 0. So everything in gray here is tag 0. And what we want is for this little chunk right here that we can clearly tell is part of this vertebrae and not this vertebrae, we want that to be in tag 0 too, right? So you can lay down, shift, right click, tag 255, and that'll like delineate it as tag 0, but to confirm it, you don't press T because we're still in tag 2, and that'll just like, you know, try to refill in this area. What you do is you press P, and that's like that paint function where you confirm, you know, whatever you have underneath the paint. So yeah, and you can see that little piece disappeared right there. So let's press escape and get rid of all of the paint that we had laid down, and you can see tag 255 at work. We can go across all of that, press P, and now I press escape, and look, all of that is now in tag 0, the blue and the red, and that little chunk that we weren't missing. So yeah, okay, another how we fix that error that I just made. What happens if we just press T again? Boom, filled it in, magic, because T operates both on paint and tagged regions that you already have set down. So for example, if we go to this next slide, let's press T and see it uses the tagged region that you already have down for like a seeded thing. So let's see what happens if we do it there. Yep, see it reaches down a little bit more, but what you can do is lay some more paint down and basically say that you want the tag to go down even further, and then pressing T will bring it down further. So yeah, and see it got our little piece back. And so let's color that in, press P, and then boom, completely separated into the two distinct vertebrae that we want. Great. So what you could do is put down some like guiding paint, press T, say you want it to go there. Oh, press R because you don't want it to go that far. Increase lambda by 1 more, and press T again, and then see like it didn't reach all the way. Maybe we could decrease box size, press R, and then press T again, and ooh, see, that's just too much. So I'll just stick with 3, and I'll show you later how we can go back and fix this. But so one could just scroll through slice by slice with the paint that we have down, or we could use technology. Let's go back to that shift key that we have and see what happens when we press shift and T. Ho ho! We don't want it to go forward because that would go back when it's like a larger vertebrae. Let's just finish out this little edge piece here. Press OK. Have your finger on the escape ready to go, and it'll scroll through and tag all the way. And it's doing a pretty good job. Oh, you can see right there, it kind of got out from underneath the tag or the painted region, so it stopped painting there. And you can see this does a pretty good job. I'm gonna end it. It looked like it was going pretty well, but I'm gonna show you how it can do even better, even faster. We're just going from using like Stone Age tools to like the future of rendering right here. Started out with P and now we're going to Shift T. I know things are moving fast, so let's get rid of that paint, because see what could theoretically happen, like we saw kind of going on right here, was that we had like paint all up in here, but as the bone moved, it would stop being tagged. Like if you press T right here, it won't do anything. Maybe if it was touching like a tiny bit right there, you press T and it just gets that little edge. So if we had kept it going to the very end, eventually the bone would no longer be underneath the painted regions, and we'd have to stop the process and draw more paint, or you can actually paint while the process is going, but it gets messy and there's a better way to do things. So we don't want to connect with iCloud right now. So the best way to do this business is to use another great feature, the copy tag function. Now you can see as we scroll through, there's this weird blue inner silhouette business going on with all our tagged regions. And that's because the copy tag function is used with the shift function, the repeat processes, to seed the next slide. So I know in older versions, which is really nice, the copy tag would actually like use the last thing to intuit where the next one would be, and then you could just like confirm with T and like paint the whole thing like a blue, only like a blue thing would show up here, and then you could be like, oh yes, that looks pretty good, and then press T and then boom, you'd have that piece covered. But in version whatever 4.6 or 6 point something, I only know copy tag to work with repeat functions. So how that works is we can press Shift and T again and go backwards, and notice how there's no paint anywhere. It's just the tag, it's just starting from a slice that already has tag on it. And we press OK and watch it do its magic. See, you can remember there used to be only tagged up there, and it'll slowly disappear, but it's using the previous slices to seed the next one. And see how it's slowly disappearing there? We do not want that. See, that was the seed that was going to be used from the previous one to fill in this one. Now, what was happening there was a helpful thing being unhelpful. And that is, let's get back to where it was good. Back to when things were good. Like right there, okay. Let's get rid of the copy tag for a second. Is this shrink value. So what was happening was Drishti was using the tag, the previous tag, to refill the next one, but as a precautionary measure, it has a shrink function built in. So that way, if lambda was set too low and it went into like this other one, it would gradually shrink and go back into only the one that you want. Or you know, like if you had a really low lambda value and this was like butted up right close, even if one pixel or one little like voxel seed gets over here, it would just like spread as the repeat process goes on. So the shrink is trying to counteract that and just keep it in here. So like just in case on one slice it crosses over, on the next one it would shrink a little bit and you would stay in the region that you want. But because we chose our lambda value perfectly, it just started to eat away at a section that we did want. So I'm going to set it to let's say 2. And so what should happen now, Shift T, change it to backwards. Oh, see what happens is it's just going to scroll through and actually do nothing. So let's escape. And this is that autosave feature that can ruin your life if you don't save a mask before you do a repeat process. Cool, repeat process stop. I didn't press copy tag, so there was no tag to copy. And see, as you scroll through, that little border that it shrinks from is a lot smaller than what it was when it was set to 3 or 5. So what I'm hoping is that as it goes through these again, that lambda value of 13 will go ahead and fill it in. So it'll try to like shrink it to the next thing, but the lambda value will be counteracting that because these areas are also similar. It won't cross into this one, but it'll continue to fill out that one. So let's see if it works. So I'm going to start from the slice where the tag is the biggest. Shift T, backwards, and we have copy tag selected. So now it should actually do something. Oh, yep, and see, look, it's keeping to the very end, which is perfect. And it doesn't seem to be crossing over into this region either, which is ideal. Hooey. And see, that was the end of the little painted area that we put down before and tagged underneath. And oh my gosh, isn't that beautiful? This is really 21st century 3D rendering software right here when it can distinguish between those two bones. But this is also a really nice scan. So the contrasts are doing well. And another function is option click, which will define an area with which you want Drishti to work in. Oh, so you see how it got a lot smoother there? When you press option define or option click, it brings up this little box, and you're basically telling Drishti to only work within the bounds of these box. And that is actually vital when you're doing more tweaking work in other areas. So let's get rid of copy tag. This is also part of the vertebrae that we want, right? So yeah, let's say we get through working over here and we want to start tagging this stuff. So we put down our paint just generally, and we want all of these little things to be filled in. So let's do a box size of 5 and a lambda of 10, right? And let's press T and see what happens. Oh, what? Look at that. Now all of this is tagged over here because that little piece of tag that we left over here was used as like a seed, and when we press T, it filled in all of the rest. And over here is a pretty crummy job of intuiting what we actually needed as far as box size and lambda goes. So let's try the settings that we had before, and yeah, see, like it didn't get everything, but it's best to just fill with paint. No, let's decrease box size. Yeah, see, it's more selective now. Ooh, but so let's increase the lambda, and see how we just can't seem to get. Oh, see, I laid down some paint over here that I don't want. If you mess up and put some paint on an area you don't want, and you don't want to erase the whole area of paint you just put down, you can left click and it'll erase just small areas of paint. So that's nice. So see how either I can erase the paint here, press R, and then press T again. And it seems like we either have to choose between not having this area tagged, which is the vertebrae we want, or if we do a bunch of paint right here, it'll be too aggressive. And no matter what lambda or box size is the most sensitive it can be at this point. It seems like it always wants to get this part of the other vertebrae that we don't need. That brings us to another special property of tag 255, baby. Let's bring it in. And 255 actually is apparently very scary to all of the other tags, because if you put some of that down and press T, that basically tells Drishti that this region you want to stay in tag 0. So let's lay down some more right here, because see how these regions are very close. It's getting a little too aggressive, but see, now it's like perfect. So it follows the line exactly when you tell it that, when you let it know with tag 55 that this is actually still supposed to remain tag 0. So we can press escape, and then look, it's a pretty darn nice clean line right there. And so something cool that you can do is, if you get to an area like this where the line stays pretty constant, what you can do, oh actually hold on, before we get into that, I never finished my thought about the little option define box. So the whole point of this whole going over here was to say that, so if I want to do tag over here and I don't want anything to happen over here, nothing happened over here because all of my values were the same or more sensitive. So if that's already like maxed out on all it's going to reach with the settings that I had before, if you make everything more sensitive, then nothing's going to change. However, if you decrease it a little bit and then press T, let's see, decrease it a little more. Well, nothing's happening, but yeah, see how it jumps a little bit? Well, if you don't want that to happen, you can press Option, click, and then let's make lambda like 6 and press T, and then boom, it only colored in this box and nothing happened out here in the slightly darker shaded regions. But of course we don't want all that tag, so let's press R. And actually an interesting function of the box is that the walls are kind of like magnetic. So you can press Option, click, and just drag out one side of the box, and look what happens when we press T. Oh, actually here, doesn't illustrate it very well. Let's raise it up a little bit. Okay, at 9 it only fills right there. But if we drag in the side of the box closer and press T, oh, it's not doing it. But sometimes, yeah, see, it's like, it thinks like, oh, it's close enough to the edge of the box, why not just go all the way? Which is not super helpful. So sometimes dragging out the edges of the definition box will actually make things more selective. That's just a little tip to pass on there. But double click to get rid of that define box, and now escape to get rid of the paint. The point that I was making before is, so if you have an area, oh, let's get our lambda back up like this, and let's do Option define so nothing goes on over here. Let's lay our paint down. Let's see what happens when we tag, get all of these little sections done. Alright, and see, that's going to want to go over there. So if we put some shift business over there and press T, ooh, see, it's still a little aggressive. So let's just put the tiniest little dot right there, and that should do it. But we need to fill this in. So now that we have this all tagged, as you can see, if you scroll through, this line pretty much stays constant, which is super great because you can do a combination of leaving the paint on there and doing a repeat tag function. So what I'm going to do is hit escape, and we're going to get really close to the vertebrae that we want with tag 255. And now let's scroll through and see how well it stays on one side of the vertebrae. Oh, see, it looks like it crosses right there into the stuff that we actually want. So I'm going to go ahead and erase that. Let's see, it can cross there too. It's like 1 pixel there. But other than that, we can say for certain to Drishti that we never want this tagged with red tag. Yeah, actually, see, there's like a little piece there that we don't want. So what we can do now, because that just happened to be so nice, is leave the paint of 255 there, and then you can go to copy tag, and we're going to do a repeat tagging function. And I'm actually going to do shrink to 0 because all of these little spaces will get eaten up really fast by that shrink of even 2 or 1. The borders will start to go down, and it'll just start to not be tagged anymore. So what we want, I'm checking to see this, what we want is it to go backwards again. So let's start on this slice, and I'm gonna bring down this box a little bit, and let's see what's gonna happen. So if we press it for it to go backwards, it'll scroll through all these things. Oh, and see, actually it will run into the rib right there. And if we were to do a repeat with no shrink, it would get onto that little area and stay there, which we don't want to happen. So I think I will actually do a shrink of 1. And let's see how that does. And let's do Shift T in the backwards direction with the finger on the escape key to abandon at the slightest go wrong. And oh, let's keep our eyes over there. Oh, see, look, it got onto that other thing, but it kind of disappears quickly. That's fine. Oh, but see, over here is where the real magic is happening. That it never crossed that line. And even though paint normally does nothing, unless you're like working with the actual like tag up here and do the repeat function, tag 255 will stay around and continue to operate throughout the tag process of saying, no, I'd never want the tag to go over there. And so let's press escape, get rid of that, and then scroll back through and see our handiwork. We can get rid of copy tag, and oh, that's beautiful. It just barely caresses that other vertebrae without ever crossing that line where we put down the 255, but it still like plays all within there. So that's great. And ooh, see where it got into that other thing right there? You can actually do shift anything, any hotkey, whether that's P, T, or, as we're about to do right now, R, because I don't want any of that stuff there. After it gets no longer connected to this, we can say for certain that we don't want any of that red stuff there. So let's press Shift and then R in a backwards direction and press OK, and then look, it'll erase all of the red that used to be there. And so you can imagine if I accidentally pressed that in the forwards direction and it went the opposite way, it would start to erase all of this work that we had done. And then if your like escape key decided to break, then it would erase everything within that little box. And especially if you didn't have that little box defined and slip of the finger, you press Shift R, you can suddenly see all of your work just eaten before your eyes with a repeat process, and then watch it be saved, and there's nothing you can do about it. So yeah, if you're going to be doing risky repeat processes, just save your work. And see, we've been doing a lot, so I'm just going to save the work again. I guess it did it after the repeat R, but let's give it a shot. Sip of water. Cool. And we're back in it. And you can see that that little chunk is definitely not needed, so I'm going to paint over it with that 255, press P, escape, and boom, it's gone. So that's good for a little detail work stuff as well. And see these little pieces, that shrink value of 1 sucked them away. See, they're so small that even the tiniest of shrink will disappear as soon as it's separated from everything else. We've covered all of the values over here except for this little guy right here, smoothness. And let me tell you, smoothness is something that you definitely want in your scans, of course, right? Yes. So as we scroll through, this line looks pretty good. It follows it pretty closely, right? How about we take a look at it through the other graph views? So what we're gonna do is, I just option define clicked like 1 pixel. What I meant to do is command click, and you can even just hover over the area and you can see it in the other views. So let's go to graph cut Z. Now we're looking at all of our slices from the side. So I don't want this command right in the middle of what we're viewing, so I'm just going to move it over here. So yeah, you can see that we used to be like dealing with slices in this orientation, right? And clearly, like, you know, you remember where we didn't tag like one of those slices, so now there's that blank spot there, and it looks pretty alright. Like, it kind of follows the line still, right? Ooh, but see, there are definitely some jagged little chunks that pierce down in there. And if we go to the 3D view, hit update, our little pointer is going to be far away from where we want. Oh good. See this candy cane striping? That's a problem that you run into with Drishti sometimes. It looks kind of festive, but it's definitely what we do not want. So to get rid of it, let's put the point that I was going to make on hold. Just remind me that we're going to talk about smoothness when we come back. So what I'm going to do is save the work, and sometimes it just randomly does that, because, you know, if we went back and looked, it'd be like every one of these slices is actually tagged. So we didn't go through and do like, oh, tag every other like 10 slices. We did like tag every slice, so that should actually all be colored in. What we do is press quit aggressively without saving. I mean, like, you know, we saved it right before, but just quit the program without doing anything before. Open it up again, and hopefully, if we drag this back in, it kind of refreshes the program. And let's get our subsampling level of 2. And okay, see, this is what I was talking about here with, if you don't remember the value that you worked with, if I were to press T right now, that would be catastrophic. Like, this whole slice of everything would be now red. And then if I like went to right here, or let's go even further, like right there, like now suddenly like it's like a ghost tagged region. Yeah, so we want to go back to the exact, what was it, 194? Yeah, 194, so it's exactly how we had it before. Now let's check the 3D preview, and see, phew, perfect. Now it's back to normal, and see, no more fun candy cane striping, but it's actually like how we want it to be. So some things I'll show you with the 3D view is, let's hide all tags, and oh yes, now it's just our little rotating friend here. If you just click on tag 2 and then click back into the box, now, oh look, we can only see the areas that we tagged, which is kind of what the process that Robert Asher goes over operates on. So, you know, you could think if you use tag 8 to do all the connections, and then hide, you show all tags and then click off of like the one tag that you have. See how it like disappears, like even though there's that little like space dust that remained, like it actually is disappeared to Drishti. You can get rid of all the connections and then just fill in your thing once it's isolated in space. But what I was using this for was to hide all tags and then show what we have done, and that actually looks like pretty darn good. But if you take a closer look, you can kind of see how there are those weird lines like running through the middle of this plane. And that's what we're gonna get rid of with our friend smoothness over here. So let's command click to get there fast, and let's go ahead and show all tags so we can, you know, have our comforting scan there. Let's zoom into the area and move our crosshairs off. So what smoothness does is exactly what you'd expect. It will smooth away all those like jaggedy parts. So how you operate it is S for smooth away jaggedy parts. And I just pressed it, and you can see that line that used to be there was filled in, and like see right there how it used to be just like a box. It was like, now it's nice and curved. So yeah, pretty great function, and like those decreased a little, but I want more out of this, so I could just press S again, and you can see that area went down and that area went up, and you can just keep pressing S. You can just really mash it, and oh look, nothing happening anymore. So that's apparently as smooth as it can get it, right? Wrong. You can increase the smoothness parameter to like 5, and boom, that's filled in. But if you notice, now all of these edges aren't filled in either. So yeah, smoothness can be really helpful. Let's go to the next one. But it can also eat away at all of the edges of your carefully tagged region. So let's press S, and yeah, it does a pretty good job. I'm going to be risky and do another 3. And ooh, see, it ate away at those pieces in there. So maybe I'll just do 2. And see, it brings all of the things that you would notice on the 3D view, like a single slice running through your whole thing that's like slightly misaligned. Smoothness will like equalize it with all the other slices. And yeah, you can go through and just keep pressing S, or you guessed it, to streamline this process, Shift S, baby, and we can do it, let's do it in the forward direction so that way it'll end faster. But look, see, now it goes through and everything's smooth. Nice. Oh, see, when we stopped it, that's the slice that it would have gone. S. Come on now. S. Yep, got rid of those lines and that outsider line, but yeah, see? It's a pretty nice feature. But it can also erode those boundaries, and so fixing that can kind of be a pain. Something that you can do is just option define a box and only put it over red stuff, or like stuff that you want to be red, and then you can press T and it'll fill it all in. And oops, see, look, it went to the edges of the boxes there. Let's do this, and oh yeah, that's another important thing to note, is because we started like a new session per se, it resets all of the functions over here, so, or all of the values. So I'm gonna bring that down to 2, and if we were to do more repeat processes, I'd probably want shrink pretty low and lambda pretty high. Yeah, so we could I could be ballsy and just, or gutsy, excuse me, and press T right here, and oh, see, ooh, it didn't fill in that little piece there. So I could either put paint over it and press T, or I could have pressed paint, or put paint over it and pressed P, and it pretty much would have done the same thing. Like if I want this little area to be done, and if I don't want everything else to happen, you can just press P, you know, and it'll fill in that little space. And you can do the same thing with all of these little areas that were destroyed with the smooth function. Yeah, so you could go through and put some paint everywhere you want it, and then just paint those regions, you know. And that wouldn't be so bad if it's just like, you know, for a few slices. Otherwise you can do Shift P or Shift T or whatever. So that is a pretty good strategy, is to go through and like roughly do all of the slices in one view, and then go to the view that's perpendicular and see where it's all like screwy and messed up, because all of your slices will be like slightly misaligned. And then you can do like a Shift S and it'll smooth all those out, and it'll be really nice and filled in well. And if we could go back to our 3D view and hit update, and oh, I guess didn't get rid of that line, but if we were to hide everything except for 2, I'm not entirely sure where we were working. Oh yeah, I think, see, sometimes that candy cane-ness, it'll take hold in only what you've done new. So actually these lines might actually be like disappeared if we were to exit out of the program again and check back in, but or maybe we're working over here. And see, this looks nice and smooth now, so if it wasn't before, it is now. Yeah, that's pretty much how I've done a lot of vertebrae, maybe hundreds of hours, and over time you'll gain a sense of when you should increase lambda and when you should just put down, you know, like a little splotch of tag 0. It takes a while to develop your Drishti sense, but you get it down and then you can zip right along. But now I've given you the basic tools. You can be a segmenting master in just a few short 100 hours using those things. If you want to take a look through this, and I know I'm definitely curious about dilation and like erosion and stuff, like erode boundary of tag region, what, like that's probably like really helpful for like smoothing, but I don't know, I just haven't looked through every key, but I've gotten a pretty alright process down with what I've shown you, and now I'll go through the entire process of tagging this vertebrae in the next video. So if you want to see the actual nitty-gritty, every single detail of how to do one of a vertebrae, like doing the condyle region, there's a lot that goes on to. A lot of work has been put into the process of being able to tag this and not that, and this but not that. Stuff like that is hard to explain shortly, and other things that you just encounter as you segment. I will do that in the next video. It's going to be a long one, but if you really want to get the knowledge of somebody who's pretty decent amateur tagger, hunker down and buckle up, because baby, it's going to be a long and dry one, bone dry. Anyway, hope that helps, and see you in the next video.